Hey, we are live on YouTube.
All righty, welcome everybody. It is Thursday, March 27th, and this is the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. We are working on solar. So we're here today to hear from Senator Sanders, policy advisor on Solar for All federal funding program. So, Ethan, we'll just go around the room and introduce ourselves, and then we'll turn it over and you can introduce yourself for the record.
Okay.
We also ask anybody who's visiting to introduce themselves, if that's okay. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District.
Campbell from St. Johnsbury, County, Essex District.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia, 2.
Christopher Howland, Robin 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Klutner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Jack Locker, committee assistant.
Great.
And I'm Melissa Bailey with the Public Service.
Oh, super. You'll be joining us later. Okay. For the record, you are.
I'm Ethan Hinch with Senator Sanders' office on climate policy.
Great. And so you'll be testifying today just from notes and then submitting written testimony as a follow-up?
Yep.
Great. Thanks. Well, we are here to learn about Solar for All. So take it away.
Okay, so as I said, my name is Ethan Hinch. I'm Senator Sanders' climate policy advisor. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to join you today. It's no great secret, climate change is an existential threat to the entire planet. Unless we transform our energy system away from fossil fuels to sustainable energy and energy efficiency, the planet we are leaving our kids and grandkids will become increasingly uninhabitable. That is why Senator Sanders has worked for a number of years on a rooftop and residential solar program to cut carbon emissions, reduce working families' electric bills, create many thousands of good-paying jobs. This program started as the bipartisan 10 Million Solar Roofs Act, which Senator Sanders introduced in 2011. It evolved into an unprecedented $7 billion in funding for the EPA Solar for All program, which Senator Sanders successfully fought to include in the Inflation Reduction Act. This $7 billion was included in a larger $27 billion greenhouse gas reduction fund, which also includes $20 billion for an EPA Green Bank program. With this $7 billion, EPA is providing 60 grants to states, territories, tribal governments, municipalities, and nonprofits across the country to develop long-lasting solar programs that enable low-income and disadvantaged communities to install rooftop and community-based solar. These recipients include 49 state-level awards, 6 awards to tribes, 5 awards to nonprofits for work that will cover multiple states. The EPA selected these recipients through a competitive grant process that awarded $62.45 million to the Vermont Department of Public Service, the most per capita funding of any state. Senator Sanders announced these awards alongside President Biden and former EPA Administrator Michael Regan at the Prince William Forest Park on Earth Day 2024, almost 1 year ago. Days later, the senator met with Governor Scott and then Commissioner Tierney to discuss how to implement the program as quickly as possible and make Vermont the Solar for All model for other states. Throughout the rest of 2024, Senator Sanders worked hard to move the state to quick action on this important program. Frankly, he was disappointed and frustrated by the department leadership's lack of progress on planning and implementing the program. Solar for All panels could be on Vermont rooftops right now if action had been taken. Unfortunately, they are not. Since the new year, the senator has been encouraged by Public Service Commissioner Carrick Johnson's approach to moving the program forward. Senator Sanders has been very clear. Commissioner Johnson and the department's smart and capable staff must dedicate the necessary time and resources to planning and implementing Vermont's Solar for All program as quickly as possible. Urgency is critical because time is of the essence. President Trump has made dangerous and unconstitutional moves toward authoritarianism, including illegally freezing the Solar for All program for several weeks in January and February. While Solar for All funding was unfrozen around February 20th, the EPA's Office of Inspector General recently announced it will audit Solar for All to determine the status of funds, top recipients, and potential risks and impacts of the program. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin has been quick to allege waste, fraud, and abuse across a number of EPA grant programs. And Senator Sanders remains concerned that the EPA will try to illegally terminate Vermont's Solar for All grant. If that happens, quick action by Vermont Attorney General Charity Clark will be crucial in blocking the Trump administration from illegally repurposing or rescinding this funding. However, the best way to protect Vermont Solar for All program is to begin installing solar panels and saving working families money on their electric bills. Solar for All is a transformational program. It's going to create more than 8.7 billion in national electric bill savings over the lifetime of the program's solar panels. It's going to reduce emissions equivalent to taking more than 7 million cars off the road. It's going to create hundreds of thousands of good jobs. It's going to strengthen the resiliency of our electric grid. It's going to help working families break free from the power company by owning their electricity generation. It's going to create a very clear reminder right on Vermonters' rooftops that renewable energy is the cheapest form of new energy generation, period. Senator Sanders is committed to working with the Public Service Department and the Vermont legislature to move this program forward as quickly as possible to expand residential solar, lower the cost of Vermont electric bills, and combat the existential threat of climate change. Thank you.
Sounds like Senator Sandy wrote that himself.
Yeah. Ethan, can you tell us, can you soar up to 100,000 feet and tell us a little bit more about the kinds of, just trying to recreate from your testimony. So Senator Sanders fought for this funding at the federal level. It was included in the IIJA.
The Inflation Reduction.
The Inflation Reduction Act.
Yep.
Vermont, I presume, applied for, you said it was competitive grant?
Yep. Yep.
So Vermont applied for and received 62.45 million.
Yep.
And I know we're going to hear from the department later and hear about, I'm sure we're going to hear about a lot more about that work at the state level. But when you say that it funds residential rooftop, through what kinds of programs, through what, I'm having a hard time envisioning what sort of programs are funded.
Yeah, so Melissa can talk more about what the state has proposed in terms of specific programs. They put together a very good application, which is why they got the most per capita funding of any state.
It's exciting.
It's pretty broad. Taking the residential, in terms of community solar, off-site serving households, it can be rooftop. And, Vermont has put together an application that includes both of those, types of solar.
And the residential, would that be incentives basically to make it more affordable for individual homeowners?
That's
Is
right.
that okay?
This
Yeah.
is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is all targeted to low income.
Low income and disadvantage. So again, Melissa can tell you more about that, but low income is roughly 80% of area median income. There are certain areas that were designated by the Biden EPA as disadvantaged.
Right.
That covers about 80,000, more than 80,000 areas in Vermont, mostly highly concentrated cities.
And so let's talk a little bit more then about the status of that money now. And again, I know, and I'm feeling like, I booked an hour for you. I never know how long things are going to take. And then Melissa's not joining us until 11. So I wish I'd thought that through a little bit more carefully. It seemed right at the time.
Sorry, Chair James.
Yeah,
I did talk to my colleagues at the department, TJ4, I think is on your 10 o'clock slot.
he is.
Said he's amenable to shifting if that is helpful to the committee. Whatever order you want to pass.
Yeah. Let's finish with Ethan and then maybe it seems to make a lot more sense. Is that okay with everybody? We'll just, if TJ can come later. Okay, great. Then we can just talk solar for all. Andy Perchlik is coming in later, but I think he's going to talk about only the Clean Energy Development Fund. Jack, can you make sure you reach out to Senator Perchlik?
Yep.
And let him know we're changing our schedule and we'd still love to have him come in this morning and he can just talk about the Clean Energy Development Fund. And I think that was what the direction I sent him off in anyway.
Okay.
So, okay, sorry. Thanks, Ethan. Back to you. So, so the status of the funds now at the federal level, I know it was frozen for a couple weeks and now what?
Now it's unfrozen.
Okay.
For the time being, the EPA is performing an audit of the program. It's tough to say exactly what that means. There's not really a standard for what an audit involves with federal agencies. And frankly, the Trump administration is breaking all the norms So it's really tough to predict what that audit will actually look like.
Was this intended to be, it's a one-time shot, right? This is a big a one-time infusion of federal dollars.
Yeah, so it's a 5-year program,
5-year.
but it is just the 62.45 as the award to be spent over 5 years.
Okay, Rep. Kleppner?
And the cash is sitting in DC now. It hasn't been drawn into Vermont yet.
That's right. It's been obligated. Melissa can talk more about this, but the EPA has signed a grant agreement with the Vermont Department of Public Service. So there is a legal contractual obligation for the EPA and the Vermont or the U.S. Department of Treasury to pay Vermont for certain activities related to solar for all. But the money is physically in the U.S. Treasury.
I was glad but not surprised to hear you say that Commissioner Johnson had been bullish. I made conversations with him. It sounded like he was excited about this program and wanted to, see what we could do. So should we, Rep. Southworth.
Considering the risks to first responders, is this only rooftop solar?
This is rooftop and community. It's not just rooftop.
When you say community, does that exclude individual homeowners from doing ground mount?
That's a decision that the Public Service Department will be making as they plan the program. Okay, it's not excluded by the EPA.
Okay.
Anybody have additional questions for? Yes.
Wasn't there some issue with this community solar type of arrangements that were somehow, I'm going to use the term prohibited, but from continuing development? So I see gears aren't quite meshing.
The gears are not quite meshing in terms of community solar in Vermont right now.
In respect to 63 million, 62, whatever million of rooftop. And then this is money slated for less affluent population and so forth. So is there a per person or per site development to the individual homeowner or the individual that's applying as a.
Apologize if I'm quite interested in the question.
So is there a dollar limit in
Per person.
per person or per staff? Well, I call it per person, per location, per rooftop. And I'm making the assumption that because it's to the individuals that it's an individual rooftop belonging to a residence, not a business rooftop.
So it will be just for households to benefit household electric bills. There's not a per individual limit on the program, but the balance between helping fewer individuals more install bigger systems or more individuals install smaller systems is something that the Public Service Department is working on to decide what the best balance is to benefit low-income and disadvantaged Vermonters.
Maybe we should bring, maybe we should bring Melissa up because I assume she's the expert on the,
Have another question. Are there other states in which deployment has happened more rapidly?
Deployment, there are some states that have existing programs and existing community solar programs, and they've been able to move a little bit more quickly because of that. But this funding really is unprecedented, especially setting up rooftop solar programs, which is part of what the Vermont Public Service Department is doing, is something that's taking some time.
Let's see, are the elements of installing rooftop solar or ground mount or community solar, are those elements sort of up to the Public Service Department to determine, or are there parameters in the law that you can talk about?
It's relatively broad.
For example, maybe panel upgrades or electrical upgrades in people's homes or things like that.
Yeah, so we designed the federal program to have pretty broad eligibility in terms of roof upgrades, electrical upgrades, because solar looks different in different parts of the country, and this program really was designed to be solar for all. So we want the federal money to work in different regions.
So really, that's up to the Public Service Department to figure out those details. That's right. Good, thanks.
coincidentally,
Happily.
Yeah, happily. Melissa, can you join us?
Sure can,
And yeah, thanks for being flexible.
Sure, yeah.
So, Ethan, thank you so much. Are you able to stick around a little bit in case we then have more federal questions?
I can hop right over there.
Super.
Did I send you anything?
I don't have the link.
I do have some slides. Share.
Great.
Momentarily. Did you send that?
I'm sending it right now.
Okay. 100% my emails working.
I have printed slides downstairs. I'll go grab them for you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, great.
Okay, thank you. Um,
Yeah.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Brian, Representative.
I apologize for not recognizing you. I've only ever seen you on Zoom. We've never met in person. So,
True.
so
Good to see
hello. Nice to see you. Welcome to our committee.
This is your first appearance here. We do have a mug competition going on, which you may or may not have heard of. Frequent testifiers are in the running for a mug, and TJ is right now our lead. We're going to try to get one of those racetrack graphics so we can move the cars along.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
TJ right now is, he's in the lead. We have multiple prizes to give out. Ethan, I'm sorry, you are probably
No, you're
not in the running.
you're just getting off the starting line.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't have a lot of time on the track.
Might be
either.
hard to catch up. Yeah. Oh.
Along with TJ, Jared and Rich Coward are also on the leaderboard.
Secretary Moore,
Secretary Moore is.
Jane
absolutely-
Lazorchak.
Yeah,
Who else is?
Ellen.
Ellen.
She's
She's not
Are they
a-
eligible?
She needs to get an honor. Yeah, Ellen, thank you.
yeah. I think
Maria?
She's in her.
Oh God, I'm gonna need to order a third box of mugs.
Get it before April 1st.
Box 2 could possibly arrive this week. Thank you. All
I
right,
have the link. Should we just go ahead and not worry about?
let's just not worry about it. We all have hard copies now, so, and they'll be posted or are posted probably.
Okay.
Okay, for the record.
Hi, good morning. For the record, Melissa Bailey. I'm the Director of the State Energy Office of the Vermont Department of Service. Thanks for having me in, and I do hope I get an invitation back so that I can enter into the mug competition. Happy to be here, and it is my first time in this committee this year. It took me a few minutes to find you all. I've been down to the mezzanine, up to the third floor. All over
Sorry about
today.
that. We
Not a problem.
moved also.
Yes. So glad to be here. Uh-oh. Are these?
No,
oh.
it may have been my failure to recognize there were two different.
I didn't either.
So we'll
Okay.
just send it back to the other.
And Melissa, we now have plenty of time. So, and we're a committee with questions, so
Super. Well,
no rush.
sounds good. I do have quite a bit of information on the slides. Happy to take questions as we go. So just by way of introduction, I've been in the role of the State Energy Office Director for just about a year. Prior to that, I was the Director of Efficiency and Energy Resources at the department. Been there a total of 3 years, and my background is in energy efficiency and utility programs. And folks know, I'm sure from TJ's testimony, the Public Service Department represents the public interest in water, wastewater, electric, and telecom proceedings. We also complete comprehensive energy planning for the state and are designated as the State Energy Office under the Department of Energy's State Energy Program at the federal level. And I mentioned that the SEO role has really expanded over the past couple of years due to the influx of federal funds under the Inflation Reduction Act and IIJA. And was set up as a unique division within the department just about a year ago by Commissioner Tierney. So I have a staff of, I think 7, 8 on paper, but 2 vacancies right now. So we're trying to recruit really good people to do this really important critical energy work and affordability work in Vermont. So slide 2, let me just get to my slides. This one's a bit of an eye chart. I'm glad that you do have paper copies here. This is just to give you a flavor of the breadth of federal funds that we are administering currently. So they're divided into a handful of programs that came through under the bipartisan infrastructure law. Again, another wave of funding under the Inflation Reduction Act. And then other, just as a reminder, we're still administering the ARPA funds that came through several years ago. There's some really important climate and affordability programs being implemented there. There's a congressionally directed spending earmark from Senator Sanders' office as well to promote renewable heating in schools and municipalities. So, our smallest funding pot is about $1 million. And then we're going to talk today about kind of the biggest pot, which is the $62.5 million under Solar for All. But this is the breadth of programs we're offering, mainly in the form of grants to utilities, nonprofits, and municipalities and schools.
Melissa, on this slide, sorry, these are all there. I'm just looking at it. Authority, BIL. These are all federal funds, right?
For the most part, federal funds. I mean, there is this ARPA switcheroo to general funds that happened at the end of last year. So technically not federal funds at the bottom line, but the vast majority of this is federal funding.
So what's BIL? Sorry,
bipartisan infrastructure law.
Oh, that's
IIJA.
Okay, so that's IIJA.
Yeah.
And then we have the Inflation Reduction Act, and then we have other. And I'm seeing a lot of these are federal funds, as you mentioned, except setting aside the ARPA, the GF thing. And there's Solar for All at the 62 million. Okay. Yeah.
Can you just define conditional for me?
Yes, and that's where I was going to go next.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, in terms of the certainty around the federal funding and all of the uncertainty and risk at federal level, awards that were, so there was a rush, not a rush, the Biden administration moved expeditiously to get funds appropriated and obligated before the change in administration. Some of those awards were made conditional, which does mean that we need additional agency approval at the federal level to move forward. So the 3 awards here, the Inflation Reduction Act ones that are listed as conditional, those are currently on pause. We don't have access to those funds, and the Department of Energy, which is our granting agency for all of our funds except for Solar for All, is not engaging with grantees on those awards. So the most significant there is the HERE program, which is home electrification and appliance rebates that went along with the homes program. Those are home energy rebate programs to help folks improve the efficiency of their home and electrify. So one award we were given non-conditionally and we're moving forward with, but again, that second one focused on electrification is a conditional award that's on pause. Same with our contractor training and our building code money. So, folks ask all the time, which funds are most risky? Where do you have security? As Ethan alluded to, it's unprecedented times at the federal level. But right now, the biggest risk factor we see is the ones that are conditional awards where we can't move forward.
Has DOE given you any sense of when they will start engaging with grantees, or is it just all in them?
No, it's a really pat reply in email or verbally that is like, we're not negotiating at this time. We will let you know when things change. I'm not authorized to speak to you about that. That's the kind of language that we're hearing.
Got it.
And of course, there have been a huge reduction in force. So a lot of our project officers aren't in their positions any longer.
Yeah.
The end date that's noted, do funds have to be expended by that date, or those funds have to be covered by that date?
That would be expended by that date. So yeah.
So I'm looking at next to the bottom line there about energy building tool support and staffing.
Oh, so that one in particular, yeah, SEP formula grant, the second to bottom, we get 3-year awards from DOE on a regular basis. So that's not one-time funds. And that just means that we're about to end this current 3-year award. And we do expect to get a new 3-year award. It's about $300,000 per year that the Department of Public Service gets as a formula award from DOE. Does that make sense?
300,000. Oh, I see. It's per year. Right?
Might have been a little bit more that year, but we're at 300,000 to 400,000, and it really supports our staffing and again our energy code work, which is not funded elsewhere. Yeah, so it's similar to the way the Weatherization Assistance Program just gets annual funding. So those appropriations are up for discussion at Congress, currently, and we're hoping that they continue.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm really interested in this chart. I wish now I'd asked you to just talk about the status of federal funding. Do you want to move through your slides and stay focused on solar for all? And then if we have time, maybe we could come back. Would you be prepared to walk us through the chart in a little bit more detail?
Sure.
It's
Yep.
interesting. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Alrighty,
But-
so onward we go on solar, but if we have time to come back, I'd love to.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, as I mentioned, you know, that's just to give you a flavor of the breadth of programs that we're administering. And again, the department remains like laser focused on affordability and helping low income, moderate income, and disadvantaged households through the energy transition away from fossil fuels and into decarbonized technologies. So moving on to, I guess, my third slide here, the area of focus for today is Vermont Solar for All Award of 62.5 million. Again, we applied for 100 million, and most grantees were ultimately awarded less than the application. We are, of course, extremely appreciative of Senator Sanders' efforts to kind of materialize this funding and to get this included in the Inflation Reduction Act, as Ethan mentioned, kind of unprecedented funding here to direct funds for solar to low-income households at a national scale. And Vermont did not previously have a specific low-income solar program. Stood up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Rep. Southworth.
Could you explain the $16 million difference between the award and at least 46.5 of incentives?
Sure. So that would be the administration of the program, of course, at the department's level, as well as through our subgrantees. And then this workforce development component also would not be an incentive. So the incentives are, and I believe that's, I don't know, my program people, I think that's 75% is the requirement that that amount of the funds actually be applied as a reduction in cost of purchasing solar energy. So direct incentive as opposed to program administration. And that's typical across programs.
And you'll talk a little bit about what these different programs are?
Yeah, I'll get into detail of each of the programs. It's just that we plan to roll out kind of 3 unique sub-programs to reach different market segments of low-income households, predominantly, you know, renters, homeowners, and then tenants of affordable housing, specifically designated affordable housing. And then EPA did include funding for workforce development with the recognition that we really need to make sure we have a trained workforce of both solar installers as well as electricians to kind of complete this work at people's homes and offsite. So my next slide, number 4, shows kind of the EPA requirements within which we're developing our programs here in Vermont. As Ethan mentioned, Solar for All is one component of the Environmental Protection Agency's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, a $27 billion program, and $7 billion of that was awarded to 60 grant recipients to stand up or continue solar programs. Our program is focused on, there are a few definitions of low income that are available to be used under EPA's program. We're focusing on households below 80% of area median income. That's what Vermont typically uses across energy programs for eligibility in low income programs. And it's roughly equivalent to 200% federal poverty level, which is one of the income thresholds. Those two typically tie in Vermont, depending on household size and location. The biggest requirement under the Solar for All program is the 20% utility bill reduction for participants, and that's, of course, the electric bill. So we need to generate roughly 20% of savings for households that participate through the program. EPA also has a goal of, again, with workforce development, developing good, high-quality jobs. List of federal requirements with which we need to comply: Build America, Buy America, Davis-Bacon, NEPA, et cetera. We need to design our programs to be compliant with all of those unless there are waivers. And of course, there are volumes of quality assurance and reporting requirements that come along. These are just the strings that come with federal funding.
So for the low income recipients, the idea is that the federal grant funding will cover entirely or heavily subsidize the upfront installation cost, and then they will see an ongoing 20% saving on their electric bill every month. That's the general gist.
A minimum of 20%. That's
Minimum.
the gist, and that incentive level, right, can be toggled, so we can give a higher savings.
Sliding scale.
Yeah, I think we probably would use one incentive level when we once we finalize the program design, but that's something we're engaging with customers about right now, is how much of a benefit would it need would need to be delivered to make you interested in this program, for instance? Is 20% enough? Or do we look at a more robust benefit? Again, we're talking about buying down the cost right at the outset. So a $10,000 cost, do we cover half? Do we cover 3/4? Because under the model that we're contemplating, then the customer would have a loan payment for a certain amount of time or a lease payment for a certain amount of time. And the savings on their electric bill would need to more than offset that loan payment, right? So that on a net basis, they're saving at least 20%. But the exact incentive level has not been set, and we're soliciting input from potential participants on that.
Okay, so the loan payment versus the savings, there needs to be an overall savings of more than 20%.
More than 20, right? I can't give you a 20%
No, that's okay.
reduction on your bill and then hit you with a payment that gobbles all of that up.
Are you working with utilities to make this an on-bill thing that happens so that people aren't looking at a separate loan payment, which might be a real hurdle for some people?
We have not contemplated putting the payment for the solar on the bill. For this, specifically for the single family program, they would be using the net metering mechanism, so they'd be receiving that reduction on their electric bill, but we have not contemplated putting the financing on the electric bill. And we, I don't think the utilities have interest in being the financer. We do plan to engage with a finance partner to offer that loan product.
I'm thinking of the HFA's RAP program where they are working with utilities to tie the loan to the electric meter.
Yes, with money VHFA has.
Yes,
I helped set that program up. It is a possibility, and I will make note of that. I think it's probably something worth talking to. We're conducting focus groups with potential participants, and I think it's probably worth. It's a great point. It's probably worth raising with folks. Is it a barrier to have two separate loan payments? Yes, we think it might be two separate bills. How much of a barrier? And then, of course, the flip side being, is that worth us then going to negotiate with the utilities to get that wrapped? Did take a few years to set up. I helped at the utility end to do that. And we are hearing urgency to deploy as well. So that's just
Well, I'm thinking that with RAP set up, maybe that greasing the skids a little bit. And also I'm thinking about how difficult it is to get people in this income group to be willing to even consider taking out loans, regardless of the benefits and the cash flow implications. It's just something that people just won't touch.
Rep. Southworth?
Thank you.
Do you envision any upfront costs not covered by any of this to the people?
so we don't anticipate paying the whole cost of the solar system. So there would still be a remaining cost. We expect most people would finance that or choose to do a lease where there's not an ownership at the end. We're also engaging with potential participants about, is there a use case where folks think they might buy the system outright and not finance it, not take out a loan? So in terms of upfront cost, we're going to design the program so that there does not need to be any outlay of funds at the outset by participants.
So it won't affect their personal funds to start into this program.
Right. They should be able to start with no money upfront. And we're still exploring, are there people who, for whatever reason, would prefer to purchase the system right away and not finance? That's an unknown for us right now.
Thank you.
Victoria?
Just on the RAP program, my understanding is that it stays with the meter. So like even when you leave the home and you sell it, the next occupant keeps that investment and keeps paying it off. And so maybe that could work with solar as well.
Yeah, it's a real selling, I think. I mean, I know Rapids have had a hard time getting going, but I think that is understandable because these new programs just take a while to get going. I mean, work on a similar one with affordable apartment housing. And it takes time. You can throw all kinds of money out, and it just takes time for a pipeline to sort of build. And I think when I was working at Capstone setting up thermal, initially one of the dimensions of that program was to include a single family component as well, but we gave up on that because it was just too difficult to get people to again, in the same income group to consider taking a loan of any sort for any reason.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Folks are debt averse, and our goal in setting up this program is to eliminate or reduce as many barriers as we can for participation. So the on-bill financing is something we should certainly explore. And yes, REP has been challenged, but it's a great opportunity for infrastructure investments in the home to be financed over a longer period of time. And again, to stay with the meter, as for mentioned.
What does RAP stand for?
Weatherization Repayment Assistance Program.
Okay, so moving on to the timeline, which takes 2 slides here, slides 5 and 6. They show the program planning timeline from the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act through launch. Again, we completed our application back in 2023 in the fall, and were notified that we would receive an award last April. That does not mean we received the funds. That was a notification, and the amount again was lower than our application for 100 million, and it was we were awarded the 63 million. So just looking at where we are now, EPA was under a statutory requirement to obligate funds by September, which they moved to do, and that's when we actually began our period of performance and were able to spend the Solar for All funds. So we received access to the funds in September. I would take issue with the assertion that we could have solar on roofs now, given the constraints we were under with EPA and the necessary approvals before we actually drew down funds. So we do remain in a planning period. We worked in the fall to finalize our EPA work plan and budget with the reduced funding amount that was from what was in the application. Received that for the end of 2024 and have submitted a revised work plan and budget to EPA and kicked off the planning year in January, which is the period that we're in right now. We do have up to a year to plan and finalize programs and seek final EPA approval. We don't know that it will take the full year, and we do have we have clarified with EPA that individual sub-programs that I'm going to talk about in a minute can come out of the planning period and can launch individually. We don't need to wait for all 3 sub-programs to be finalized. So we'll be able to launch as we are ready.
Did you say you've already drawn down some of the funds?
We're drawing down funds now for staffing.
That's
As
funding is available.
yes, there was, my next slide, I think, is obstacles, but yeah, there was a pause where the funding wasn't available and now it's available again. And so we're doing monthly draws to the federal system for our staffing costs. I mean, those are pretty small relatively.
Right.
I think we're under 100,000 that we've drawn, but we are able to access the funds, which was
You can't draw down all 62.
not draw down all 62 million.
That's unfortunate.
It is. Unfortunately, yes, I meant to mention that these are on a reimbursement basis, so we can draw down funds once we've expended them. We cannot draw down in advance.
Yeah, it's a 5-year plan, 5-year drawdown.
Yes, 5 years. We have 5 years to spend the funds.
You should ask the Treasury to escrow the funds. I have a question, an actual question. This $100 million proposal that you put in, different from the 100 million that the climate action put in, just happens to be the same dollar amount.
Yes.
The one that was a single state one that
Climate
that we weren't.
pollution reduction grant
Right,
that was not
implemented at all.
successful. Yes, that was unfortunate.
Very.
Separate 100 million.
Okay, thank you.
So where we are in the timeline now, we just submitted our quality assurance program plan and quality management plan to EPA, and we're conducting outreach and engagement. Again, as I mentioned, both to potential participants, so actual low-income tenants and homeowners who might participate in this program, as well as program partners, utilities, finance agencies, solar developers, and other folks who have input on program design. And again, we will be deploying certainly by January and hopefully sooner, specifically for the RAISE program, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, which is our single family program. This just gives a sense of the overall timeline that we are looking at.
I'm sorry. Acre sounds really familiar to me. Is that an existing program?
Yes, so Acre builds off an ARPA program, a program that was initially started with utilities with ARPA funds. and is currently active. So we actually feel a little bit less urgency to launch that program because there's money on the streets right now, so to speak, for people who want to do the community solar model. Whereas the single family, the raise program is the one we're really trying to launch first. So did I go through the obstacles? I would be remiss not to note that 2025 has been challenging, the first quarter of 2025, in terms of managing federal funds and the uncertainty around whether the funding will come through, whether people will continue to have jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a pause in communication from EPA. There was a pause in the funding, as I mentioned. They've resumed communication. The message we get from our project officer is this program is a go. They're committed to meeting the goals of the program that EPA has previously set, and they're engaged and they're responsive to us at the staff level at EPA. We have been able to access funds. We're doing that monthly. And as Ethan mentioned, there is additional scrutiny on Solar for All. And just last week, the Inspector General announced that the program would be audited. We don't know what that means for the states. We don't know the extent to which that audit will reach down into grantees or whether that will really stay at the EPA level. So getting into some program specifics, which is probably the most interesting part for you all. The largest sub-program that we're planning to offer is affectionately called the Managed Affordable Solar Housing, the MAF program. 22 million of our award will go to Vermont Housing Finance Agency. We're just got them a draft grant agreement this week to implement this program. Again, you can see some of the goals of reducing energy burdens for vulnerable Vermonters and reducing electric costs. We expect to be able to serve about 3,000 households.
Melissa, what is that? So you're going to sub-grant out to VHFA, and the recipients are residents of affordable housing. So what does that actually look like? What are you building? What will they build? What will they do? How will they?
Yeah. So, and the next slide shows a little bit more of a visual. So VHFA will be the lead on this program. They understand the kind of revenue streams that they need to bring together, revenue streams and tax credits to build affordable housing. So they will be essentially awarding grants to both existing affordable housing units and new affordable housing that's coming online to build solar at the time of construction. So they will be awarding upfront grants to construct the solar, and then there will need to be a mechanism by which the property owner receives compensation for that electricity, and that would either be something like group net metering. When we start getting into the community solar aspect of our net metering program, the department has a proposal for a renewable energy for communities program. I'm not sure if you had testimony on that yet.
We have started talking about that's the REFORC-C thing, right?
REFORC-C, yeah.
I assume we're going to be hearing about that later too. We've heard some testimony on it. I assume TJ is going to be talking about it. It's in 289. It's circling all around us.
Yeah. So, I mean, just high level, that's not my,
Sure.
yeah, I don't live and breathe that world, but net metering is just a compensation mechanism where the utility pays for generation. So, under this program, net metering isn't an option. We're comfortable that there are other options under which VHFA or the developers could have a tariff from the utilities to gain revenue from the generation of the solar panels. And again, just like with a single family, application, the Solar for All money will be used to buy down that cost so that, essentially you need to be made whole for the project cost either through an upfront incentive or through your ongoing compensation from the electric company for the output. And those two sources need to bring enough funds to give customers, tenants at 20% lower electric costs.
So this is for multifamily particular program?
This would be multifamily affordable housing, yeah.
And for housing agencies, nonprofit housing developers, as well as private for-profit owners.
Yes.
And I think you said new and existing construction. And also for master metered and individually metered.
Right.
Multifamily. if it was a master meter building, then the benefit would really be going to the owner of the building. The 20% benefit or reduction in cost. But I guess there would have to be something about the owner reducing the rent.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're,
I'm
I
getting
think
into
I have
it,
one
you know.
slide. No,
Yeah.
no, it's great. It's,
Okay.
there is this issue that was, if it's a master meter building, if the tenant doesn't pay the electric bill, they can't get that benefit through their electric bill.
Right.
And I think this was envisioned in EPA's guidance. There needs to be some other demonstration of what is a benefit.
Yeah.
Rent reductions is one of the benefits. They can be non-financial benefits. I've heard people say something like free internet could be a benefit. So that's something that VHFA is going to work through. Again, in the focus groups they have with potential tenants, what would provide value? What would make you want to be a part of this program?
Great. Thanks.
So I think we can move on to raise. I'm on slide 11. Of course, I don't get numbered my slides for you all. This is the homeowner portion of our Solar for All program. We expect to allocate about $14.5 million to rooftop solar arrays for low-income households. The conceptual design again would be that a financial institution would take the upfront tax credit to kind of reduce the upfront cost of the solar. Then there would be the Solar for All incentive to again buy down that cost, and whatever remaining cost of installing the system could be financed over a 6-year term, which would require payment from the customer to a small payment to continue paying down the project cost. And then at the end of that term of the loan, they would own the system and continue to receive the benefits, again, through the net metering program in Vermont. So compensation on their electric bill. Worth noting, we're also exploring the concept, as I mentioned, of an outright purchase and of an ongoing lease. We've heard concerns that some low-income homeowners may not actually want to own the asset at the end, because of depreciation or, stranded asset, or decommissioning costs at the end of life of the solar. So we're exploring whether there's a lease option, where they wouldn't actually take ownership.
Rick Bailey?
So on an example, so say my project, I qualify through all things, $10,000 the cost of the project. So this program a lot later, 10 grand, what is the grant and what gets financed? Is it?
We'd expect, so we haven't set the exact amount, but for illustrative purposes, like a $10,000 system, the Solar for All grant might be $5,000, and then you'd finance the remaining $5,000 over 5 or 6 years through a loan payment.
Okay.
And then through participation in Vermont's net metering program, you would be paid by your utility for what the solar array was putting out. And the overall savings to you as a household needs to be at least 20% a month.
Rob Southworth?
You mentioned decommissioning and end of life. Do we have any firm idea on the life expectancy in solar panels?
We typically assume 20 years, and I think that's conservative. I think they can stick around for closer to 30.
And is there any money set aside to offset costs of decommissioning and removal or replacement?
We have not set aside costs, and I don't know whether that's an eligible expense or not, so I'll make a note to check.
Thank you.
Yeah. Fund we need to hold for 2 decades, but it's worth exploring.
Rob Bailey?
And following up on Brett Southworth's question, are those panels hazardous waste?
Oh gosh.
Probably.
I think there are components that are potentially hazardous. I don't have that answer, and I can follow up with you. It's not my.
We do have,
I used to work in a hazardous waste program many years ago.
For the record,
Vermonters for Clean Environment. They look at everything. If you were to deconstruct everything together and pool it, they would then run an analysis, and they would not fail as a hazardous waste. That being said, they haven't set a hazardous waste standard for PFAS, which may be a component of the glass or the back panels, but right now they're not, so.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
Right. So we're still on raise. On slide 12 here. So yeah, just some program elements for standing up to raise program. And then I've mentioned partners several times. We'll be needing to contract for a financial institution to actually finance the solar panels. We anticipate having a contract for a program administrator or implementer to do the customer facing components of the program, help people apply, do the income verification and qualification, and then also work with the developers. That's a component of the program that hasn't been fully fleshed out yet, whether we have a small network of contractors that work across the state, whether any and all contractors are eligible to put up projects. That's something we need to work through, essentially our network of contractors. And then again, there are a couple of grants and contracts that will be issued to support workforce development, apprenticeship programs, training for the solar workforce, as well as electricians. And through the RAISE program, we are estimating to serve about 1,000 households.
Melissa, do you have any idea whether there's any sort of certification standard for solar installers?
I don't know, and I'm sure, and I can ask my my program managers who are specifically working on workforce development. I don't believe that there is a certification for solar installers.
Okay. I wonder if they would also qualify as residential building contractors, and therefore need to register with under the residential building register.
Yeah, right.
They may.
Projects over 10,000, right, or is when that kicks in.
Right.
Just want to follow up on what Representative Campbell said. On the next slide, it says there's a grant to subsidize apprenticeship programs, which would lead me to believe that there should be, or possibly could be, some sort of certification
There
involved.
probably is in the industry, and I don't know whether we require that in Vermont.
That'd be interesting testimony to take. Hey, Jack, can you make a note? We should learn a little bit about the workforce.
Yeah, my understanding is we don't currently have an apprenticeship program in Vermont. It's going to be potentially set one up. Staff working on this program have been working with Department of Labor and reaching out there. So I have the detail. I have the high level concepts, but not the details. But we'd certainly be happy to provide more.
It'd be interesting to learn about it, I think, because you may agree. Yeah. Okay.
Voter certifications as well.
Oh, and it would be an occasion to talk. Yes. Always looking for opportunities. All right. Thanks. Here we go.
Sure. I think we're moving
Oh,
on.
sorry. We're not. Rep Bailey.
Well, following up on both Rep. Salbert and Rep. Campbell, there is this one that's on hold. What is the staffing and support for increasing code compliance? Is that part of the on page 2 on that?
Yeah, on my overall federal funding.
Would that be funding this program that they were talking about, the apprentice program?
No, that one is on hold, and I can circle back to the code work at the end. But there is money within the Solar for All budget, so within the 62.5 million to do workforce development activities, and we have pretty wide latitude in terms of what those look like. So apprenticeships or trainings or like certifications, I think would all fall under workforce development. So those funds we do have access to. I think it's about $1.5 million on workforce. It's on one of the earlier slides.
Thank you.
Sure. Moving back to the last program, the ACRE program, as noted earlier, this is based on an ACRE program, Affordable Community Renewable Energy. It was launched using, I think, 10 million in ARPA funds. This is a partnership with utilities, the Vermont utilities, where they essentially construct or make solar projects available to low-income customers and provide that benefit on a bill credit. So you're essentially buying a membership with a utility-owned solar array, and you get a reduced bill for a certain term of membership. And again, we're bound by the 20% bill savings requirement. We expect that would be about $25 savings per month on average for an average Vermont household. Again, that's the minimum. We could decide to provide more benefit, but again, of course, the obvious trade-off there is serving fewer households. So that's a program design decision that we need to make. We are currently engaged with VEP Inc., who is the administrator of the Standard Offer Program in Vermont, and our hope is to, rather than have utility by utility specific programs as we do currently with Acre, is to have a statewide program that VEP Inc. would administer, have some standardization there. They do have the infrastructure right now through the Standard Offer Program to essentially disperse kilowatt hours, disperse RECs, just disperse things to the utilities and do that billing. So we're hoping to leverage that infrastructure and have a statewide Acre program. Right.
Yeah, could you give me the complete thing on VEP? What is VEP?
I believe the acronym is Vermont Electric Power Producers. I hope they pretty much only go by that thing. It's a nonprofit down in Manchester that again has been administering Standard Offer for 15 years or so.
Carolyn
And
Alderman, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
They're behind the scenes.
I live there.
They're represented
Yeah.
from Manchester.
Oh, the representative
no,
of
no,
Manchester's befuddled.
Small office, small
Huh?
operation, small operation.
Okay, it makes me feel a little bit better. Rep Howland?
So we had testimony at, I don't know if it was the Department of used to be the Department of Utilities, you're the Department of Public Service, but the net metering as of August 1st of last year, there's a 4-cent charge for every kilowatt hour that's produced by the system, and then whether or not they retain the RECs, another 4 cents. But that the utility in their goals to the future, some utilities are already contracted out for the need for solar, and it's pushing the heat back into the evening, so that they have a tendency not to want global solar resource. Not to mention, aside from that, is there was something about the distributed generation unit. So how does all this interface with too much solar at peak time and not enough for base load when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. There's a lot of complexity around solar development and small scale solar development in Vermont. I'd say overall, our view is this program, from the department's perspective, is an affordability program. This is about getting financial benefits to income eligible households. It's not about building more solar. And basically, the amount of solar that will be deployed in Vermont is dictated by the Renewable Energy Standard, which the legislature has passed, right? And I think last year we increased the amount of in-state renewable that's required to be passed. So this will be building solar with Solar for All dollars, but that's solar that would otherwise be built anyway, because utilities now are obligated to get 20% of their power, their annual usage from in-state resources. So really, in my mind, this is about saying if we're going to build solar, we should make sure those benefits go to the people who need it the most, which I think is not the trend that we've seen in solar deployment over the past 2 decades. Does that help? I'm not sure I fully answered your question.
Well, no, but the statement was made that rooftop solar units were the most expensive means of developing new generation. So from the standpoint of, yeah, you save 20, 30, 40%, but if you pay twice as much for it,
yeah,
you're out a net 20%, you're not gaining. one individual may gain, and I find $100 utility bill, then you're saving $20 a month, very modest projection. But that $20 savings costs the neighbor more, and if the base is going up, now you're saving $22 on 120.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
the base keeps raising, and then I think we're going to hear about battery storage
Well, that was my first.
implement. So not only do we pick on Burlington Electric, they got a diesel generator somewhere for peak that they generate with a diesel generator at minus 13 degrees, but because they have RECs, that's not, they're offsetting it with something that was generated last summer. So the total cost of the utility plant has to be recovered somewhere.
Mhm.
And if we're making further investments, there's a question, and the size. So we have another bill that says raise to 25 kW, the size of a permitted system under some things, that the type of individual households don't need to be that large. If you're grouping them together in some sort of community base, I can see that.
Yeah, we 100% share the concerns around rate pressure in the electric sector, and net metering, distributed solar in Vermont is creating rate pressure for other ratepayers, for non-participants. That's absolutely true. In our program design, we're attempting to minimize that. Essentially, so the only program that is contingent on the net metering mechanism is the single family program, where there will be some, so for those 1,000 participants, they will see savings. And yes, by receiving net metering compensation, there will be some additional costs for other ratepayers. For the other programs, we are deliberately trying to avoid the net metering structure because of that additional cost for non-participants. That's an equity issue. I'm not going to get into the rec accounting and rec arbitrage. I have opinions on that, but I'm not. It's not.
The clock keeps ticking, and they're going to take up time.
TJ's coming in around 10:30, so we're still doing okay, I think. Rep. Torrey?
Mine's a quick question just about the RAISE program. Would it potentially be of value to pair this solar with storage for those folks?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. And I realize it's not in my slides. So storage is an eligible expenditure under, under the Solar for All EPA requirements. So we do anticipate deploying solar in certain instances for vulnerable populations. So folks who have medical equipment or high outages. Again, it's just that cost benefit calculus. If we spend more on storage, we have fewer households we can serve with solar, but we did build into our application the ability to do some storage in certain instances. So I think I'm on my last slide, so never fear. So just where we are again now, engagement efforts, consistent with Act 154, the environmental justice law, we take the mandates there seriously to engage with the people who are going to benefit from our programs when we're designing them. So currently we're having focus groups to allow for deep discussions with participants about what looks like it, what is a meaningful benefit, what are the barriers you've currently experienced to accessing solar. If you want to access solar, we hope people do. And so that's happening kind of over the next month. We're going to engage with community-based organizations like the Community Action Partnerships in a virtual session, and then have some in-person, again, focus groups geographically dispersed around Vermont. And that will inform kind of our program design going forward, and it will inform our conversations with the financial partners about what kind of loan products do people find attractive, and with developers and utilities as we kind of solidify the program design that we have conceptually sketched out.
How do you get the word out about the trying to engage with potential program participants? Do the CBOs do that for you guys, or how does that work?
Yeah, we're working with the community-based organizations. We do have, I should have mentioned, we did bring on a contractor in the fall to help finalize our work plan and do this public engagement. That's Vermont Energy Investment Corporation. They're consulting based, not the Efficiency Vermont wing of the EIC. So they're supporting, along with our data and equity manager across the street at the department, they're supporting the outreach efforts and have a good network of community-based organizations in Vermont to kind of reach out to people and hopefully bring them to the table. I mean, we're targeting focus groups of like 8 or 10 participants, and we're hoping that we can fill those seats and get people engaged. It's hard to get people, you know.
Do you have any of these events sort of scheduled and located and stuff and things like that yet, or is that still in process?
They are scheduled, and I'm trying to, I believe one would be in the Northeast Kingdom, one would be in Barrie, and one is somewhere. I can send you the dates and locations. That would be more helpful.
Okay, that would be great. And I guess I was wondering about engaging through the local town energy committees.
Good point. I believe we've reached out, but I will double check that.
For tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm curious about the program design. Have you considered just giving people a solar system instead of doing this financing system, or are there requirements for them to have skin in the game? I'm just worried that you're going to have a major uphill battle to get uptake on this if you know the perceived benefits aren't as high as they might otherwise would be.
It's a good question. We haven't had a lot of conversation on 100% incentive, which is basically what you're talking about. I don't think that we're precluded from doing that, but I would have to double check with my folks who are closer to the requirements, the program requirements. I think we've envisioned about a 40% incentive has been kind of for the rough math. So if we went to 100, you know, I've shared the numbers of folks we're hoping to serve. I think it's about 8,000 statewide across the 3 programs. If you toggle that incentive up, you fewer participants, and that's really just the trade-off. But we're open to considering what's going to be most beneficial to Vermonters,
right,
and equitable, knowing that this is a one-time slug of money that we may never see again. That's
and
really balanced.
there's room for modification if you have resistance in the beginning to change the dynamics of the program.
Yeah, I do think we can refine the program as we go. I will just say, you know, we're also paying very close attention to how much we need to adhere to what we put in our application and our revised work plan to EPA, because we do not want to do anything that requires a formal amendment or that like essentially opens up the grant in a substantial way. So when you're working with federal funds, you have certain latitude to make changes where your project officer can just sign off via email and say, yep, that's great. You're within your flexibility of the program. And then there are ones where you kick into a formal amendment process, which we are, for obvious reasons, avoiding.
Right. I also have a follow-up to Mr. Howland's, Rep. Howland's question. So TJ, or I think someone from the department presented a map of Vermont and the areas of the state that are constrained by distributed generation and the areas of the state that have a lot of capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So is there consideration in this program to target those areas of the state that have more capacity for onboarding distributed systems?
Yeah, I think that will be naturally baked in. So again, there's the 3 subcomponents. So the acre program, the utilities would cite those projects. And, you know, at the department, I mean, we generally think utilities should have a lot of discretion because they have that visibility into where the system can handle additional capacity and avoid having the need for upgrades that are going to cost everybody money. So for acre, utilities would cite those projects. For MASH, where we're working with Vermont Housing Finance Agency, I think that would be a consideration kind of as they negotiate the tariff or the people don't like the word tariff, the compensation mechanism. So I think that there's latitude there for the utilities to work with VHFA and say, look, if you're putting in a bigger scale project, when you're getting into like 1, 2, up to 5 megawatts, we really need to be careful of siting. And if you put it here, we can compensate you at a different rate than if you put it here, because you're going to be causing more cost. There's less value to the utility of putting it in a constrained area. With RAISE, the single family program, we don't anticipate directing projects to a certain area. Those are the small ones, which from the utility's perspective are less troubling. And from an equity standpoint, I think there are questions there about telling low income homeowners, no, sorry, your circuit's maxed out, even though hundreds of folks have already availed themselves of generous compensation under the net metering program. I mean, my entire street has solar panels. So, I think for the single family small projects, we don't intend to geographically target, but for the larger scale, we certainly would.
Yeah, that's helpful.
I think we've got 3. So you guys,
Find it out.
yeah, Southward.
Yeah, I just kind of want to echo Rep Morrow's thing about the cost versus the benefit financially. So a lot of people are going to look at what it's going to cost them to repay that versus what they're actually saving. Their math isn't going to support that. And I think we need to be very cognizant of that when we're thinking about the program, because it's not going to be sold and it's not going to be successful if you have people that look at that aren't going to take advantage for that reason. But I just want to be very careful of that.
No, I appreciate that. I think that's a really good point. And I'm thinking it has implications in a lot of the programs we're rolling out, right? For heat pumps, the same would be true. Look, you're going to save money over time by this heat pump. I think it's a really important point. And the only thing that troubles me is having to close the door on the program after a year and say, sorry, folks, there's no more. But I 100% hear the concern, and we want this to be attractive to people. And again, I'll look at our ability to toggle those incentive levels if people just really don't think a 20% bill savings or $20 a month is really enough to make them want to participate. We're going to want to make it more attractive. We 100% want to get these funds spent.
Yeah.
Rep Kleppner?
To add to both of those, I did a solar project with a business that the net effect was the developer could have come to me. I had to work a little more than this, but they could have come to me and said, all you have to do is sign here and we'll build the thing. And in a few months, your power bill is going to go down. No upfront costs, no hassle, no nothing. They did it on bill. And to the extent we can say that to someone, I mean, with individual residential, it's, hey, there's going to be a crew here banging around and making noise and making a mess for a while. But after that, you don't put up any money and your power bill is going to go down. Like if you can work the on-bill financing so that is the deal, I think people will be much less concerned about how much of it was a grant, how much of it was a loan, how much is getting repaid through their bill. Like they have a 5% savings, but when the loan's repaid, it'll go down to 25%. So you meet the program. Like that will all concern them much less than, wait, you're telling me I don't have to do anything and my power bill is going to go down? Like that's an easy sell.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I think that could be achieved through the lease. My understanding is that there aren't a lot of lease options offered by developers, but that is a pathway that we want to explore, which is essentially what you're saying. Like we'll handle the net metering compensation, we'll handle the payment for the product. You're just going to see your one monthly bill that reflects a lower cost because all of those revenue streams came together and there was a buy down of the cost initially. So I agree with you that that would be an appealing model for customers, and that's really where we want to keep our focus, right? Is what is most beneficial to customers. And we're hoping to have that underscored in focus groups.
Rep Campbell?
2 questions. One is you mentioned you're not going to try to geographically target the raise. But it seems like it would be really good to at least target a relatively even distribution around the state. I mean, you really want to hit these rural areas. I live in one of them, and that's the parameter. And the other question is that also occurred to me along the way here is if we're working on the roofs of single-family homes, roofs. Of folks in this income group, we might need to replace and before we put on the solar panel. And that's another another potential wrinkle.
No, this is a carport, yeah,
That's what,
a carport,
a carport, or a shed, yeah.
is that ground mount or is that?
No, I think the definition was the existing structure. So a ground mount or a carport built over a parking lot or a roof built over a parking lot exclusively to support the solar panels is not, but an existing carport is just like the.
Was there an existing requirement in there? Existing housing?
Um,
Raised?
existing housing, yes,
Yeah.
And they believe that there will be, the potential to do ground mount where rooftop isn't feasible.
Yeah.
And I do think, I'm fairly certain that roof repairs in order to facilitate the solar are eligible expenses in the project cost.
And panel upgrades and stuff like that.
Yes.
You know,
Panel upgrades,
I think
super important.
that was even mentioned.
Mentioned, yeah. Rep Bailey?
So are you looking at how would you get this program to work in a mobile home park? Generally, the footprint for a mobile home park is set up already. They don't have extra land to build solar. And are there systems for mobile homes? Is it, I'm just trying to figure out how you work in the equation.
Yeah, so I think, so VHFA intends to, offer or scope out a program, offering for mobile home parks as well as part of the affordable housing component. There are complexities. You can put solar on mobile homes. I think it's much more cost effective to build them that way from the start. And there is the concern around, again, depreciating assets, depending on the age of the mobile home. But you can do rooftop. I think an alternative would be, the ground mount solar project that could be offsite, and mobile home residents could certainly participate in the acre program where their utility would give them a bill reduction. So essentially, if it's not feasible to put solar on your roof, we wanted there to be other pathways without having rooftop solar to still give them financial benefits.
Utah just passed a bill. I haven't had much of a chance to look into it, but Utah has just recently passed a bill. I'm just looking at it right now that allows really small, they're calling them, they're portable solar systems, and they plug into your wall and they go on your balcony. I'm just saying, FYI, it's, if things are evolving so quickly. One thing that I think is super interesting, and I know we want to let you finish. Welcome to our committee. This is what it's like here.
That's why you get a mug.
This is why everybody gets a mug. Is that everybody doesn't get a mug. Just kidding. I'm the mug subsidizer. So one thing that's so interesting to me is that every good, thoughtful conversation we have in our committee around climate and energy policy gets down to the core value of upfront costs versus long-term savings. And I would be interested to know, one thing you said to me that was like, oh, was you need to look back at the original, you guys are going to need to look back at the grant proposal and see, what you submitted and how flexible these funds are to shifting program design and stuff. And so I get that. I also very much heard that we need to try to get these dollars out the door, in case they're, in jeopardy, which it sounds like, who knows. But I am really interested in how or whether even a part of these funds could be used almost in a pilot. I know how complicated this stuff is, but it would be super interesting to see if we could have part of the funds be targeted at a no cost to you, on bill, super easy, no upfront cost segment of the market versus, hey, we're going to help you with 50% of the loan payment, and you're going to see. It would just be interesting, super interesting to see, even in a small way, the difference in uptake. Because, as one of those, there are a lot of folks around this table who are among the early adopters, and it is interesting to do the math, like Rep. Southworth was mentioning, to do the math in your household budget. And if my solar loan costs this, but my electric bill is now this, and my EV car payment is now this, but my, net metering benefits are like this. It all, for me, it all nets out in a really positive way. Like overall, I am saving a lot of money. I'm saving probably hundreds of dollars a month overall. But I still had to take out a loan. And I still have to pay my solar loan bill every month, which is due earlier than my electric bill. And you know what I mean? You still have to have, it's a cash flow thing. And it would just be super interesting to see whether there's enough flexibility to at least pilot some of this money as kind of a no cost to you thing and see if uptake is a lot greater.
Yeah, no,
Rep Southward.
And just follow up with that, not a lot of people or a lot of people do not have that flexibility within their monthly income.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest concern for me.
Yeah. No, and if I could just respond, I mean, so I think that's a great idea. I think pilot makes a lot of sense. That may end up being our program design, might be that no upfront cost if that's the most appealing to customers. And I do think we might have more latitude to make changes to program design down the road. Like right now, the desire is to get something launched. I think the biggest question is like, what's the motivator for customers? And some of that learning might come from the 3 programs we have right now. So to be clear, the Acre program, all you do is call your utility and say, sign me up and I want a bill discount. And my understanding is there's unsubscribed capacity. So they have solar and they have memberships that aren't taken. So again, it's getting into what is that motivator for customers? People want it to be easy. That's a hypothesis. I think it's probably true. And how do we remove those barriers? And do participants want solar on their roofs? Is that a commitment that they want? Or do they want lower energy costs? Again, I might have personal opinions about that. The committee might. But really, what is the driver for customers? Is it, I want to own solar, or is it, I just want my electric bill to be affordable every month? And so we're hoping to get that learning. And I think we'll see that by which programs people participate in. Even if we make RAISE, the single family program, really attractive financially, I'm not 100% confident that we'll fully subscribe it. Will people still want to go through the trouble of installing solar panels? Or is there another method that's more attractive?
Yeah.
I have another linkage to just look back. I have another linkage to explore, and that is people who are contemplating leasing an electric car or plug-in hybrid. They might be interested in a way to offset the additional cost on their electric bill.
Yeah.
Good. I was just going to ask, let's see if I can remember. Oh, in terms of risk, because of the funding from the feds, there is something to be said for experimenting in this way and see if that really makes a difference for people. And you've spent, more of your budget that may be gone. So in this setting, I normally wouldn't think of that, but in this setting, don't hold back. I'm wondering with the Acre program too, because we're hearing a lot about resilience challenges to the grid and people losing power. And so I'm thinking about, does the Acre program give the utility the ability to almost have a microgrid in their most vulnerable areas? I'm not sure because I don't understand how big these.
Yeah. What I'm pausing at is, they could certainly site a solar array to serve a vulnerable area. I'm not sure that we envision doing storage through the Acre program
because of cost.
Right, because those utility scale storage is expensive. We do have some ARPA funds that we're deploying for the utilities where they can do community scale storage.
It would be great because I know we're doing we really have to focus on our adaptation.
Yeah.
And we have to focus on protecting people. So any way to leverage all the various funds and coordinate it, because it seems like this has the potential to really slot into existing things.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And hopefully the utilities would couple those funds, because I agree with you. If we are going to encourage people to rely more heavily on electricity, we need to make sure that the electricity is reliable and affordable.
Thank you. The other thing that I think of is what about the utilities that are already 100% renewable? If we have an influx of solar, number one, are they amenable to taking that on? And number two, is their infrastructure going to be able to handle that influx? And if not, that would mean an infrastructure upgrade, which would down the line mean an increase in utility costs because we're going to pay for that. So that's another concern.
Yeah, again, there are some utilities in Vermont that are 100% renewable. Everybody's on that trajectory, right? We have 100% renewable energy standard. So again, we look at these sub-programs as operating under the umbrella of the renewable energy standard, which you all set that policy and said this is the right amount of renewable energy for Vermonters, and this is the right amount of in-state renewable generation for Vermonters. So this would essentially just displace solar that was built elsewhere. So when we see a program like this, we don't see it as adding more solar. We see it as targeting the solar to low-income households. In terms of grid constraints, I think, again, I don't think any utilities can't take additional power anywhere on their systems. It's really about where they can put that distributed energy.
It's just a thought for concern. That's all.
Oh, yeah. No, minimizing the unintended consequences of grid upgrades is absolutely important.
You get more than you bargained for.
It was great. It's my first time over here. This is great.
This is only your
Welcome.
first time?
This session, yeah.
Yeah.
I went up by the cafeteria first. I started up in,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Staff
right.
Environment.
Jeez.
Well,
Well, thank you for coming. Is everybody good?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very helpful.
happy to talk more
Thank
about
you.
the other federal funds at another time or whenever.
All right. Well, I think is TJ coming around 10:30?
He's out there.
Okay. Could we take a 5-minute break? Jack, let's go off live. Melissa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for your.
And